Coming up on Currently, we'll talk about a trailhead coming to the Leelanau Trail, expanding the campus at Inland Seas, plus replacing the Beitner Bridge, a new TIF district for US 31. And Beth Milligan discusses the planned removal of a pedestrian bridge while clearing up some misinformation about that project. That's all ahead on Currently. Welcome to Currently, where we discuss some of the top local stories directly from the journalists who are covering them. I'm your host, Crystal Frost. We have a great show for you. Craig Manning from the Leelanau Ticker is making his debut on this show. And as always, our friend Beth Milligan, head writer for the Traverse City Ticker, is here to perfectly explain complex stories and deal with Crystal's strange ideas. This podcast was recorded on Wednesday, June 25th at 4:15 p.m. The Tigers are 50-30 and still the number one team in all of baseball. That said, things may change by the time you're watching or listening. Support for Currently comes from Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings, located on South Garfield Avenue in Traverse City. It's home fashion elevated. And from West Shore Bank. When you choose West Shore Bank, you're not just choosing a bank. You're choosing a partner that's committed to the well-being of our community. You can visit them today on 8th Street or at westshorebank.com. Support also comes from the Coin Slot Arcade Bar in Traverse City. It's a chill hangout with a full bar in a low-key setting. Well, my friends, I feel like I'm surrounded by the tickers.
You are.
We have Craig here from the Leelanau Ticker, Beth here from the Traverse City Ticker. Craig, you do a little bit of everything too, right?
I do.
You're all over.
Yeah.
You're all over the place.
The Traverse City Ticker.
Yeah.
Quite a lot, but not as much as Beth.
Right.
So
But today, in this capacity, you're talking about
things
the
having
Leelanau
to do
Ticker.
with Leelanau. Absolutely.
I love that. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, Craig. How long have you been in Traverse City?
I grew up here, actually. My family moved up from Cleveland, Ohio, when I was, I think, 3 years old.
That was a good move.
Yeah, definitely better than a lateral move.
Exactly.
And then I grew up here. I went to Traverse City Central High School, graduated from there in 2009,
Okay.
went off to Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo for my degrees in music. I was a vocal performance major going in.
Okay.
But found my way to writing while I was there. And then, I actually ended up interning at the Ticker.
Well.
Way back in 2012, met the team back then. And then, fast forward to, I think, 2017, they brought me back in as a freelancer, and kind of it was history from there. My wife and I moved back in 2018, and we've been here ever since and couldn't be happier. So.
I love that. I didn't know you were an intern for the Ticker.
Yeah, way back in the day. And we've had Craig's wife, Jillian Manning, who's editor of the Northern Express. We've had her on the show before.
Oh, cool.
And my favorite fact about Craig is he is an incredible runner, marathon runner.
Yes.
Won a bunch of races locally. Very good runner.
Haven't won any marathons yet. The
Not
marathon is very tricky.
Yeah.
But yeah.
5Ks, right?
Definitely some 5Ks. I won, my favorite one was the Leaping Leprechaun this year.
Yeah.
Where I took a wrong turn somewhere in the first mile, tacked on an extra, 2/10 of a mile, realized my mistake, found my way back onto the course, caught the people who had passed me, and still won the race.
Wow.
So
Impressive.
that was an accomplishment. My time would have been better if I hadn't.
That's really
done
amazing.
That,
Oh my God. You're like, I still won the race. Listen, if I just finish a 5K, I feel like that's a win.
Yeah.
Right?
And we don't
Yeah.
run in my family unless we're being chased. So
It's good to know.
That's the philosophy of many.
That
It's fair.
running for pleasure is something that I wish I had. I really do.
It's great for health. It's great for enjoying the outdoors.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much earlier this week when it was, pushing 100.
Too hot.
That
Yeah.
was tough, but we made it through.
Oh, wow.
And now we're enjoying some nicer weather, us runners.
Speaking about getting outside, you have a story about a new trailhead that is planned for the Leelanau Trail, and I'm really excited about this. Can you dive into this one, Craig?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm excited about it too. I don't know if you guys have ever made that trek from Traverse City to Suttons Bay on the Leelanau Trail, but it really is a different beast than the Tart Trail, where you can step off pretty much at any point and find a parking lot or a rest area or a a business who can help you if you're in distress.
Yeah.
Out in Leelanau, it's a long, long way. I remember I got stranded out there once on a long run with a friend on a very hot day, and we had we ran out of water, and then there are just really no drinking fountains on this stretch, in part because there aren't a whole lot of trailheads.
Right.
So we're very excited about this. The Tart folks really are excited about this. They recently acquired what was a former hop farm in Elmwood Township on Birch Road. And it's 5.5 acres, and they're going to use it not just as a trailhead and a parking lot, but they're currently in the visioning stages for everything from a pocket park, which would have some play areas for kids, spots for people to rest, to like a pump track where they could kind of,
Did you say pump track?
I
This is
did.
Crystal's
This is one of my
favorite
favorite
phrase.
Really?
Yes, I just love a pump track. What a cool idea. So they might have a little pump track there too.
Yeah, and that's less useful for us runners. Really no benefit for us, but cycling education is such a big part of what TART does, and what Norte does, and what happens in northern Michigan, and obviously cycling traffic is so big for the Leelanau Trail that it would be fun to have some of those interactive things at these places where you can come in and stop if you're on the trail, or if you're coming in to park and jump on the trail. One of the things they've also mentioned is that they really want it to be kind of a park and ride situation.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that trailhead, it's not super far into Leelanau County, but it's a good spot. If someone wanted to, if someone from Leelanau County is commuting into Traverse City,
Sure.
especially in a summer like this, where we have that road construction going on right at the gateway that can really add some time to your commute. You can come to this trailhead, park your car, and go from there, bike into town.
Yeah.
It would probably save you a lot of time. So
it was kind of a long time coming to get this trailhead, right? I mean, you write in your story that the director of TART, I think, had been looking at doing something like this for the last 9.5 years. Right?
Yeah. So one of the people I talked to for this story, his name is Chris Cushman. He's the trail planning and management director for TART. And he said he came on board almost a decade ago, and they were talking about this back then. But what he said is that, it was so hard to find land at all in Leelanau County because it's so desirable. And when they could, it was either, wetlands or just not really big enough. And what he said is that they had this what they call them TART ambassadors.
Oh, yeah.
Who owned a house near this spot that encompassed this property and was thinking about selling it, and they were able to, work with that person to kind of come to terms and purchase that property.
So they actually ended up splitting the property, right? So they have
I believe
a house
I believe that's correct.
on maybe the east side and the west side. This 5.5 acres are going to become a trailhead. These ambassadors, you wrote about this too. These are folks that clean up the trail. They're folks that do things for the trail, and oftentimes live on the trail. So their homes, essentially, their garages,
absolutely.
their pole barns, were sort of the storage facilities for the trail as well, which will also be something very important to put into this trailhead, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize kind of what goes into keeping these trails operating, especially, after a storm, if a tree's fallen down over the trail, or especially in the winter, where, I'm out running on the TART pretty much every day in the winter. It's almost always been cleared that morning.
Wow.
And, that's not employees doing that. That's volunteers. But yeah, it's extra exceptional out on Leelanau because they did not have a storage facility for all the equipment they need to, anything from blowing debris off the trail to plowing it in the winter. They didn't have a space that was dedicated to that purpose. So yeah, the volunteers were often just storing this equipment in their respective garages, and it was kind of, as far as I understand it, scattered around different parts of Leelanau County. So a logistical nightmare, especially if there's a big issue that needs to be resolved to kind of find, where the proper piece of equipment is and get it to where it needs to go. And that just kind of adds time and strain to the whole system. So yeah, a big part of this is going to be this maintenance facility where they can store all that stuff and just have, that dedicated space.
I really love the heart of the volunteers, though, that were like, sure, let me give you a part of my garage. But I can imagine them being like, hey, we need a couple of, wagons.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe, where's the leaf blower? Oh, I think that's up at Jim's house.
Yeah.
Or for the people who, have been storing this stuff, they're probably like, and I said I would do this, but it's been about 10 years.
Listen, as someone with a garage, I've been in that position. Like, you ever going to get your stuff, friend?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been storing this for you for 20 years. Oh, well, thank you for that story. It's a great one, and I would encourage folks to make sure that they are signed up for the Leelanau Ticker. Just go to leelanauticker.com and you can subscribe right there. We're going to move on to another story here from you, Beth Milligan. You're all about the bridges today.
We got a lot of bridges to talk about today.
We're talking about some bridges, but I want to start with Beitner Bridge. And you wrote a story about the plan to replace that bridge. So let's dig right into that. What's happening with Beitner already?
Yeah. So this is the Grand Traverse County Road Commission got a federal grant to replace the bridge. So the federal government will cover 80% of the project costs, which is a nice chunk of change.
That means we're replacing a bridge.
That means we're replacing a bridge. The Road Commission will cover the other 20%. The estimate right now is $4 to $4.5 million. That will get a little firmed up when they go out to bid, but that's the estimate for the project right now. They're looking at starting construction in 2026, although depending on how long design takes, it could be 2027. But potentially as soon as next year, we'll see this project start. So right now, I'm sure many folks have driven in that corridor, but it's a 2-lane bridge. It essentially just has 2 tubes or culverts underneath where the river users pass through.
I love those, by the way.
Some people like to shoot the tubes. That will be replaced with a single span bridge that will create an open natural river flow underneath. So we won't have the tubes anymore, sadly. I know some people like those. But usually it's better when you can open up to have the natural flow of the river there.
I know it's better for
nature.
And nature, but it's really fun to shoot.
It is fun to shoot that. The other thing is that the bridge is 2 lanes now. They are leaning towards adding 3 lanes total in the future. That would provide a center turn lane, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is eventually there's a plan to potentially widen the Beitner Keystone Corridor up to Chum's Corners with multiple lanes. So this would allow that future growth to happen. The other is many folks will know there's 2 parking lots on either side of the bridge there in the east and the west. Many people use those parking lots, especially in the summer, to tube, kayak. Some people go up to Shumsky and, you drop in and you come out at Keystone or Beitner. They're very busy. They're also kind of a safety hazard. You see people crossing the road a lot between those.
With tubes. Yeah.
With tubes.
Or carrying a kayak.
Or kayaks. Also, when it gets really busy in the summer, and I think this, I personally have experienced this a little more tense with the roundabout now that there's an unbroken flow of traffic. So when you get people trying to turn in and out of those lots and there's just a long, steady stream of cars, people get frustrated. There becomes backups in the lots. People, when they're frustrated, tend to drive a little more recklessly or cut out in front of people. So part of the planning for the bridge project is looking at those parking lots. There is discussion about potentially shutting off the driveways to both of those parking lots from Beitner. The Keystone Rapids trailhead could potentially be moved down to the River Road roundabout.
Okay.
If you take the roundabout right now, there's a little spur there that kind of just looks like it's an empty leg to nowhere, a little parking lot. So they could build a new parking lot down there that would connect out into the walking trail and the river system. The other parking lot at Beitner Park, which is the most heavily used one right now, they would still keep the parking lot there, but they would create a direct driveway access out onto River instead of from Beitner.
Okay.
So close off that driveway, and then people can come around the backside on River into that parking lot. Just trying to reduce all of the traffic conflicts with pedestrians that are happening right at the bridge right now.
It is a lot.
It can be intense, and it's, again, very popular to use. So those plans aren't 100% set in stone. They have to work among multiple county departments, including Parks and Rec. The city of Traverse City also owns property by the roundabout, so they have to coordinate there. I will just let folks know that when that project does happen, of course, we'll give plenty of heads up. But let's say it happens next year, that bridge will likely be closed in its entirety.
Yep.
Which is a major north-south route through town. So we're probably going to see a lot of detour action on Cass. Cass is also going to be reconstructed around Hartman Road. It's going to be adding a new turn lane up to South Airport. So all those industrial park businesses there can
that's smart.
get in and out. So the hope is that they will finish Cass first, probably in early 2026, so it can handle that detour traffic, and then the bridge will happen. But of course, we'll keep folks posted on that timing.
You mentioned a couple of roads there, and anytime we talk about bridges, literally anywhere in Grand Traverse County, it prompts online discussion, and this was what happened on the Facebook page for the Traverse City Ticker today.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking about the Hartman-Hammond bypass, which is dead, right? Like, why are we going to revive this thing?
I think the diplomatic term is it's on indefinite pause, but yes, that typically means it's been shelved. I mean, that was a project that as they kept going through the planning process, the cost just kept ballooning. It was $100 million, then it was $300 million. And I think at a certain point, especially given that there was still pretty significant environmental resistance, a lot of right-of-way acquisition that would have had to happen, that they did decide at some point that the project had gotten too out of hand.
Yeah.
And so it's just on hold.
Right.
But what you're going to likely see then are these projects like widening Keystone and Beitner, eventually tackling South Airport Road, because that traffic does have to go somewhere.
It does, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for keeping us up to date. We'll be back with some more bridge talk and an expansion to Inland Seas. But first, a word for our lead underwriter, Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings. Now, sometimes we just need a change of scenery, and that could mean anything, really. It could mean moving to a new location, starting over. It could mean getting a new job, changing the paint in your bedroom, getting a new hairdo, rearranging your furniture, or maybe it means changing your furniture altogether. Now, at Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings, they're very quick to say that new furniture might not be the answer to all of your problems, but it couldn't hurt to try, right? And now is the time to shop. It's the summer sale at Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings, where you can save on literally everything in the beautiful showroom. Plus, all qualified purchases are going to come with a free gift to make sure that you are making the most of summer. Gifts like a Yeti cooler, a Blackstone griddle, maybe a free car detail from Brickyard Detailing. I don't know what I would choose. I would just have to buy a lot of things to get all of them. I think that's the solution to everything. You can shop for a new scene right now during the Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings summer sale. It's at Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings on South Garfield Avenue in Traverse City. It is furniture that you'll love to come home to. All right, coming back to currently here, and we are going to talk about a story that you covered about Inland Seas, Craig, and this is a campus expansion in Suttons Bay. So tell us a little bit more about that with Inland Seas.
Yeah, well, just some quick background on this. I feel like every time I talk to Fred Sitkins, who's the executive director over there, he's telling me about how they are literally bursting at the seams because there's so much demand for their education programs.
It is a wonderful program. It's good.
Yeah. And for those who aren't familiar, Inland Seas does a lot of things around the Great Lakes. A lot of it's aboard ships, but some of it's having to do with the shoreline and the watershed, and it's kind of all these things that touch our wonderful water ecosystems up here, and how they affect our way of life, how they affect the culture of Michigan. And you can learn kind of all about that in so many different ways through them. And they've had just so much demand. What he told me is that in 2014, Inland Seas had a staff of 4 people and was delivering about 100 programs a year.
Wow.
And now they're up to 11 people and 320 programs a year. So they've just been growing and growing and growing. And apparently, behind the scenes, they've been working on this campaign, this big fundraising campaign, since 2021.
Oh.
It just went public this week. They just finally unveiled it. It's been in this quiet phase, but it's an $11.1 million fundraising campaign. They're calling it the Campaign for the Future of Great Lakes Education, and they've already raised a little more than $8.1 million. So about $3 million left to go. They're hoping to hit that by the end of the year. This is kind of the home stretch that they bring into the public phase. But yeah, a lot of a lot of that money actually has already been spent. It's been things that you probably read about in the Leelanau Ticker, news about Inland Seas. They purchased a schooner a few years ago to expand their ship programs called the Alliance. That was part of this campaign. We just didn't know it.
Oh.
And then they've also, they've expanded their staff. Earlier this year, they took over the stewardship of the Leo Creek Preserve nearby for some of their watershed education programs, and apparently that also links into this campaign. But yeah, this last part, the big thing for a while has been they need to expand that facility that they have up there in Suttons Bay, because they just don't have enough classroom space. He said it's hard to even find space for all the kids to put their stuff, or everyone to eat lunch, especially in the early spring when the weather outside maybe isn't great, and heading outdoors for that isn't an option. So they have been looking for ways for years to expand this facility, and in the past couple of years they've actually bought the properties both north and south of where they are now. And so this fundraising push that they're entering right now, the big goal there is to actually renovate this property to the north. It's called the Millside Building.
Okay.
And they are going to basically rebuild that space so that the upstairs will be all educational space. What he said is they're basically going to scrape off the upper floors and rebuild them for their purposes. And then the lower level, very notably, given the news around Discovery Pier, because Inland Seas is a tenant there, they have a workshop space, they store vessels there, they work on boats there for maintenance, and they have to vacate by later this year because of the Freshwater Research and Innovation Center. So they needed a space anyway. This building next door came available very serendipitously, Fred said, and apparently it has this lower level that is just perfect for their purposes. It's like wide spans where they can fit their boats and do this work. So they actually have already done demolition down there, and it's basically all ready. They're going to start moving boats in pretty soon. So that's a big deal, just because I know there was a lot of worry about where those tenants at Discovery Pier were going to go.
Right. I'm really just amazed at how they were able to raise $8.1 million so quietly over the past 4 years. Like, that is significant. And then start these other projects that were already funded. I mean, we have a lot of friends that are fundraisers, and I'm just like astounded when anyone can ask someone for money and raise money for an organization to keep it afloat. But this is really cool to go into the final phase of this fundraising project and know that now is the time where they're asking, all of you, everyone to donate, right?
Well, that is what he said. It's like, he feels like this organization has been so supported by the community for years, to the point where, they have all these donors or these family foundations that they can just reach out to kind of behind the scenes to say, okay, we don't want to go to the public with an $11 million ask.
Right, that's a lot.
But, if we can raise all this money kind of behind the scenes, and I know there's always a quiet phase in fundraising. I know NMC is in one right now for their new campaign, which is not formally launched yet. So I know these things happen, but it is impressive when you see those numbers.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, just kudos to Inland Seas. I love it. I'm super excited to see the expansion, and very happy to know where those tenants are going from. At least one tenant is going from Discovery Pier. Yeah, very cool. Thanks for that story. And again, you can read all about it at the Leelanau Ticker, leelanauticker.com. Back to Beth, and we're going to talk about a new TIF development zone in the East Bay Beach District, which is a new district, like I didn't know about. I love districts.
We talked about districts on the show before, yeah. You
but
love
this
a good
is,
district.
I saw the sign for it. I was like, oh, there's a new district.
You need a name for everything.
You really do. This is along US 31, but before we do that, I think it's a good opportunity to clear up something that you've already talked about, both on the show, and you have written about this for the Ticker. And this is about the DNR's plan to remove the pedestrian bridge along US 31. This is all about the state park that is just directly across from the bay. And I think some things, a tragic accident that had happened and it resulted in a fatality sort of took on a life of its own, if you will, online, where a lot of people started to ask about why the pedestrian bridge is going to be removed. Many people were outright begging for it to stay. And I thought maybe it would be a good opportunity for you, in addition to talking about this new TIF development zone, but to talk about what is that project? Why are they removing the pedestrian bridge? And what's going to happen in lieu of the bridge?
Yeah, and you're right. We've talked about it before, but I think there has been so much misinformation because there was a pedestrian who was killed this past weekend crossing US 31 at night. It brought these safety issues back up. The Traverse City State Park is going to be closing down on July 7th, right after Cherry Festival, so getting through the last festival push, and then they'll be closed to the end of 2026, so for the next year and a half. And a big part of the project, they're making a lot of renovations to the campground itself, but is the removal of the bridge and kind of the reconfiguration of the campground entrance and a new traffic signal. So I think, to address some of the misinformation, part of the reason there's multiple reasons the bridge is being removed, but one of them is the new traffic signal, which will create a new entrance into the campground, is going to be very closely situated to where the bridge is. Yeah. So the bridge will interfere with sight lines for drivers to that traffic signal. It will be a full traffic signal. I think some people have thought it will be like the Hawk signals that are in Grandview Parkway where you hit the button and then it activates kind of a blinking overhead light. This is a full traffic signal. Traffic will have to come to a stop and allow cars to go into the campground. The idea is, the bridge is deteriorating. It's very old. It's not ADA compliant. The new crossing at level will be ADA compliant. It will also allow DNR maintenance workers to cross on equipment from the campground to the beach, which they maintain back and forth. Right now, they have to kind of go out on the highway, come around. Same with families who have, coolers or strollers or carrying bikes. Often people come off the TART trail to go to the beach. They can't carry that stuff up the bridge. So often they're getting in their cars and driving across to the bridge, which is increasing the traffic congestion. Or you see cyclists struggling to get their bikes up over. So this will create a level crossing for all of those issues. They had looked at other options. I've seen readers ask about a tunnel, which I think for the water table there is probably completely impossible and the cost is astronomical. They did at one point have a potential plan for an ADA compliant bridge. A bridge like that requires a lot of approach room because you need enough switchbacks to create a grade where someone in a wheelchair mobility could get up. So you need a lot of space on either side of a bridge to make it ADA compliant. There was a time when there was a hope that they could be working with a nearby hotel project to do that. That project kind of got put on hold. The DNR felt that the ADA bridge was way too expensive. The approach lines for it interfered with the visuals of the bay from the campground. So these are just so folks know all the reasons why that has, it's being replaced. It doesn't mean some folks don't still feel strongly about it. Yeah. But I like people to have at least all of the information about what is actually going to be going in there and some of the reasons behind the bridge's removal.
And another thing about that light, that full traffic light, people, there's a lot of people who are crossing at all points in that section in the East Bay Beach District between 3 and 4 miles specifically, but even before then. And I think that the plan is to slow the traffic down a bit, right? I mean, we've all been in that situation where you start to see people, as soon as you get out of the city, all of a sudden they're going very fast. It's only 45 there, but people are going 55, 60 miles an hour. And, to try to slow it down, to have another light there is a good idea.
Yeah, that is true. So that signal will slow the traffic down. And the difference between, in a worst case scenario, getting hit by a car that's going 30 versus 60 can be the difference between life or death. Again, that ADA compliant bridge just, would have been by itself about $20 million. The whole project for the state park is $8.5 million. So it's, very, very expensive. So, there were multiple reasons, I think, why that had happened. But we have still seen many people who, including Grand Traverse County commissioners who had passed a resolution of support asking the DNR not to remove the bridge. I will just note that East Bay Township has no control over that. They have no jurisdiction over the bridge. It's the DNR, and the DNR feels it is essential to the state, park project to do that.
Well, let's talk about that TIF zone then. So this is for the East Bay Beach District. What does that mean? Remind us, school us on TIF again. You're so good at it.
Well, I was going to say, just as we're coming to the end of the show, I was going to try to keep it brief. TIF is a very complicated topic here, but I'll just do my best.
30 seconds or
20 minutes later.
Yeah, exactly. I got charts out. No, so East Bay Township, you mentioned this is a new district. It's true. The Beach District, they created a vision. They went through a community visioning process. That plan was revealed last year. It really, over 700 people participated in the process to talk about things they want to see along US 31. And those desired improvements are what East Bay is hoping to help fund through this TIF district. It's similar to a DDA, which many people will be familiar with in Traverse City and downtown Traverse City. It's called a Corridor Improvement Authority, but it essentially works the same way. It's not a new tax. It's not raising taxes. It sort of freezes the values of all the properties in the TIF district, and then each year, as those actual property values go up, it's capturing the difference. So the base amount is still going back to all the taxes jurisdictions, but that increase is used and captured for public improvement projects. They have to be public improvements. They're described in a plan. They can't just be willy-nilly. They're outlined ahead of time what those are. And tying into our bridge discussion, what would happen in East Bay Township, what people said they wanted to see most in this district is pedestrian safety improvements. So we'd be talking about potential crossings every quarter mile along the corridor that could look like a lot of different things. It could look like medians. It could look like the hawk signals we see on Grandview Parkway. They haven't said what that would be, but that's a big improvement. Finishing out the sidewalk network along US 31. Another big project was talked about is a public pier. So this is a little bit smaller in scale. I think the pier we remember in Traverse City many years ago. But there's some land that is available that could create a little waterfront park pavilion for people to kind of rest or get out into the water more, because a lot of the beach land along US 31 is locked up in private hotels. So this would create a public access point for that. So what will happen next is there will be a July 30th open house for the public to learn more about the TIF plan. There will be an August 11th public hearing at the Township Board. And then in September, the Township Board could choose, if they feel comfortable moving ahead, to vote to start the Corridor Improvement Authority. The public will know by that time what are the improvements in the plan, how long is the plan going to go. And then, starting in the fall, they can develop and build that out and eventually start it going in the corridor.
Well, I mean, I think it all sounds great. I think TIF is a great idea, but that's just me. Please don't send your letters or emails. I think it's fantastic.
They will. They will.
Yes, they will.
It's a complex issue. It's another one that people often misunderstand. But I think if people, it is a way to sort of have regional cooperation to fund these public improvements that everyone can use along the beach. So if people want to learn more about it, I do encourage to go out to the open house or the hearing, because that's your chance to kind of weigh in and learn more.
Perfect. Thank you so much for keeping us up to date on that project as well. And before we go, I always like to ask what you're all looking forward to in the coming week. And as you can see, I'm wearing my cherry earrings because the National Cherry Festival, 99th National Cherry Festival, I believe, is launching tomorrow, Saturday, for 8 days of lots and lots of cherry fun. So I'm really excited to eat all the pie. And also, you and I are going to go see Weird Al together.
We sure are.
Yes.
We sure are.
I love Weird Al.
I'm excited for that.
So Weird Al on Tuesday. I'm excited for that. How about you? What are you excited to do this week?
Yeah. Well, speaking of the Cherry Festival and running, I always run the races.
Oh, nice.
So I'll be out there running the Cherry Fest half marathon on next Saturday.
Wow.
So praying for some good weather. It's
Weather, right?
in July. You never know.
Those races start early in the morning, right?
They do.
Good.
Yeah.
And you come up the peninsula? Is that?
Yeah, so that one actually, that one starts out at Old Mission School. It kind of routes through some cherry orchards. And then, they drop you out on Peninsula Drive and you run back into town and finish this up on Front Street. It's fun because it's really the only opportunity you get to just sprint down Front Street because they've closed the roads by then for the parade. So always a fun experience. I didn't get to do it last year because I was injured. So I'm excited to make my comeback.
The half marathon. I have to tell you, I have run the 5K for the
There you
National
go.
Cherry Festival of Races. I've done a few 5Ks, and that's a goal. I'm going to get back to the 5K, but half marathon, good on ya.
Thank you.
Good
I'll
on
see
you.
you guys on the sideline.
Yes.
Spectators.
What about you, Beth? What are you excited about?
Well, our team, most of our team, sadly, I don't think Craig is coming, but it depends on usually who can go with the work schedules and everything. But some of us from the Ticker are doing our annual work outing where our publisher takes us down to Detroit to see a Tigers game. We go to dinner, spend the night. It's a really nice team building. And as you mentioned, the Tigers first to get to 50 games. They're doing great. I'm excited to see some baseball.
I'm so excited for you to be there.
Yeah,
That's going to
thank
be
you.
great. Now, are you going to be in the home plate club? Did your publisher spring for those?
We talked that's too fancy. And also
Right?
it's going
I
to be a
feel
little
like-
bit hot.
I feel like we should have some. I mean, we've covered that.
Yes.
That development. So, for those who aren't familiar, the Home Plate Club has some seats that were designed with Promethean technology, which is made here in Traverse City, and that is a human-centered climate control, so that your seat can be heated or cooled,
Cool.
depending on what the weather is like.
I think
So-
we'll be in the normie section.
Yeah.
But I'm
Okay.
still excited.
But that's still okay. All right. Well, thank you both so much for being with us, Craig Manning and Beth Milligan. Another wonderful show, and we are back next Friday. Be sure to subscribe to the show on all the platforms at crystalfrost.com. You can follow us on social media and subscribe to Currently with Crystal Frost wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch the full show on YouTube and on Facebook. And Currently is a Compass Local podcast produced locally by Pancake Boy Productions. Big thanks to our lead supporter, Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings, in addition to West Shore Bank and the Coin Slot. And speaking of the Coin Slot, did you know that they have several skill cranes for you to show off your sweet prize-getting skills? Did you know that?
very good at skill cranes.
I know you are. I don't think you and I have ever actually tried to compete in skill crane, but I'm pretty good too.
I got a collection of like little stuffed animals and things I've gotten.
I want to see this competition.
I
I
think-
think,
you
I
know
think
what?
we should sell tickets. to
Yeah.
this.
We should. You can come show off your show maybe your kiddos, your partner, your enemy. Just show them how good you are at skill crane at the Coin Slot. We're back next Friday, everyone. See you then.